Hi, my name's Greg and welcome back to Wargaming World. This is going to be the fourth interview of the series, and for the first time we're doing this with a group. As well as myself, we have Scott, who's in the previous video. We've got Peregrine, and we also have Mark. Mark has his own YouTube channel which you may follow, which is the House of Hengist, and we're focusing on France 1940. We want to cover this with it being the 80th anniversary, and so we're covering lots of different elements to that: gameplay, solo play, etc., all sorts of different things. One word of warning is that it's audio, and it's a little bit challenging occasionally through that, but if you've watched the previous three videos you'll understand why. But I think this is going to be something that you really enjoy. If you've got any comments, any thoughts, please feel free to put them on the YouTube channel, or indeed on the Wargaming World Facebook group, which is relatively new. You can come and join that if you like. Just a final thank you just before we start the interviews is to Nicholas and to the group Federlance. Some of the images within the interview itself have come from Nicholas and from the group, and it's been very generous for him to share them with us. So let's watch the video and enjoy some of the images that they have shared. Thanks very much.
Game on the table, please.
Yes, you don't want to know.
Yeah, no, probably not, because I lost last two really badly.
Yeah, well, that's my last. Yeah, my last one was a train wreck as well. I don't know what the hell I was thinking. I was on crack that morning, I think. Maybe I wasn't on crack. Maybe I'd forgotten to take my medication. That was probably the problem.
Well, there you go. See, 1940 Germans, you should be on crack anyway.
Yeah, well, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, Pervitin, the original crystal meth.
Yeah, absolutely.
Ah, right. Okay. Well, look,
I read a report about that recently, actually, and it was amazing. They had people running behind the front lines, millions of tablets in suitcases, handing them out to battalion commanders. It's quite amazing.
One of my favourite stories is the crossing of the Meuse, where one of the I think he was a major, and he was leading, I think, a battalion, and he'd been on this stuff for I don't know how long, but he kept going for 4 days, and he pushed and pushed and pushed across the river into this assault, and he just fell over. He just collapsed, and everyone thought he'd been shot, and he just was out completely. He hadn't slept for 4 days on this stuff. So it was a wonderful little story, and you sit there going, Christ. But they were going at a rate, that's for sure.
Yeah. I mean, the longest I've gone is we used to do a thing called the Chief of Divisional Artillery's assessment every year, and so you do a 4-week field exercise, and then the last 36 hours was the assessment. You didn't get any sleep in that 36 hours, and the day before they would rest you, and it didn't make any difference. By about 22 hours, everyone was taking micro sleeps, and you'd be sitting in the command post trying to work out a fire mission, and your head would be nodding like this, and the signaller would just go, "Hey, wake up! Hey, wake up!" So, bloody nightmare. There's nothing worse than sleep deprivation. It's absolutely soul destroying.
Yeah.
well, look, because
that's why they use it.
In my time, I can assure you. Yeah.
because we're all
so I'm glad we're all here.
well, this is this is fairly chaotic, but I thought, just to try and test the idea of whether we could get this together, that we have. But I thought, if we're all spare for the next half an hour, why not just chat now, and then rather than trying to reconnecting, because that might just be more sensible. So what I'm making suggest is, rather than
I'm available.
well, look, we've got just so that we don't all talk at the same time, I guess what I'll do is I'll say very little and suggest one or two things, of which we can sort of a bit take it in turns of who wants to take some points. But what I wanted to do was to do a video where we made sure we covered really France 1940 for obviously it's the 80th anniversary thereabouts, and because we all play that period, it would be interesting just to cover it. So could I just sort of start off, if I start off with you, Scott, what do you do in terms of this period, in terms of 1940, and what's your interest, etc.?
Oh, okay. Well, for me, I just wanted a very interesting period, simply for the fact that I don't know, I guess it's the first main campaign where the British forces are involved. If you disregard the campaign in Norway, I just find it really interesting. I mean, the British tanks are interesting in themselves. It's a clash of doctrines, really, where you have the Brit tanks are prominently, they're either an anti-tank tank or an anti-infantry tank. And then you're coming up against the Germans, who their tanks are basically the forerunner to the all-rounder that they would soon become. And then you've got the Germans, using aircraft as mobile artillery and the like. But I just find it an interesting period.
That's good.
I can't really.
Yeah. And Mark, what about you? What are your, I know you cover the period. What are your thoughts there?
I think, like most people, I really didn't know Jeff Pitt about really Blitzkrieg and what had happened. And when I decided to set this up, I really wanted to see, being an archaeologist and a historian, I always like the history and the context of what's happening. Well, I like what Scott does with his battles, because he places it very context specific, so you can see the link and the events and what is going on and the outcome. And for me, I just wanted to understand a little bit more about what actually really happened, because there are so many myths about Blitzkrieg. It's, all panzers and things like that, but actually there's a hell of a lot of infantry fighters. And also there was a massive, this whole thing by, First Fleet Corps, when they jumped, into Holland, the first time this has ever been done. And it's it's classic, because if you go to Market Garden in 44, it's pretty much the same sort of plan. I mean, you get Gummiputschen, these dummy parachutes employed. They've only got one division, and they're dropping on these key targets of season hold. And everything could have gone wrong. And in some cases over the Hague and Rotterdam, it goes terribly wrong. And it was just fascinating, because, as I started, I thought, well, I'm just going to take this battle by battle. I'm 50 bloody episodes in, and I'm only on day 2. And I'm like, I think I've bitten off a little bit more than I can chew here. I've learned a lot, a staggering amount. Most impressive of all has been what I can't find out more than what I can, namely about how the German logistics were to keep up with this incredible drive which goes on. And the battles are fascinating. And I didn't know about the Crown Prince of Luxembourg. I didn't know about the Luxembourg defences. I didn't know anything about their alliance relationships. And so through the process of researching each game and looking at what's happening and how we're going to simulate it, you learn a hell of a lot.
Yeah.
So for me, it's been a hell of a journey, and I'm really enjoying it. And it also means, that, again, you're making things for each battle, and you're trying to find them, and you have to come up with the cheapest possible cost solution to do that. And sitting there trying to carve out about 10 crash JU or anti-Jews was really quite entertaining. So, yeah, for me, that's what it's really about, the history. And, and as I said, I think the Belgians fought pretty well with what they had. A lot of them panicked, as you would imagine. The Dutch did the best they could, but this was a superior tactical manoeuvre. And when you look at all the factors, like the Gamlen's sitting miles away from headquarters, the political pressure is under. He's completely nonplussed as to what to do, because he's got a plan, and suddenly that plan isn't working. And before he knows it, Eben Amel fell with I think it was 88 men or something took it. That was supposed to last for days.
Yeah.
It was impregnable. Gone.
Yeah.
And suddenly the whole plan unhinges. I mean, that was probably one of the most exciting things. I think on a small scale game it would be fantastic, because you don't need that many figures. And just, doing the landing is really exciting in itself.
Yeah.
Go wrong.
Yeah. Peregrine.
Yeah, that's what I'm about, really.
Peregrine, can I just come in with you here with your thoughts on what you do when you're interested in the period?
I think it's so great to see Scott. Everyone doing early war, because a lot of people are quite fixated, I think, within the late war segment. But this is the defining period. This changes the whole of the world, really. You know, the British running, for Christ's sake, running, the Belgians overrun, the Dutch overrun in days. It's not like the First World War, it's days. The whole world must have been in, I can imagine opening a newspaper and going, no, that can't be true, it's got to be rubbish. Can't be true. But it was.
Yeah. Scott or Peregrine, have you got some thoughts? I mean, how do you actually practically play it? What do you do in terms of be it chain of command or bolt action or what? So what are you doing? I know Peregrine, you mentioned about doing the Jean Bleu campaign. That's the same as myself. What are you doing at the moment?
Yeah, Greg, you need to adjust your camera slightly. We're getting views to your garage roof. That's all right. Yeah, I mean, I've been gaming the early war for years and years and years. It's like Mark, it's a period that's always fascinated me. I mean, I was lucky that my father served late war, so I remember hearing stories from him. But the early war period, I think, is fascinating. I think one of the big historical factors that's quite amazing is how the Germans adapted what they learnt in Poland quickly to France. Because if you read the Polish campaign, it was much more World War One in its style. They made lots of mistakes. Yeah. They had quite a high body count. The Panzers were bloody awful. They painted targets on the side of them with the white crosses. You know, the Poles fought really, really well, which a lot of people don't realise. You know how well the Poles did fight. It's just, you know, when you're surrounded on all four sides, in effect, and you're trying to hold Poland the way, it was impossible. They just weren't going to do it. But the Germans learned from that so quickly. Little things like the change of a structure in a platoon between the Polish campaign and the French campaign. The emphasis on LMGs, which they hadn't adapted so much in the Polish campaign. You know, it's absolutely incredible what the Germans did and what they learned. But I think the other big factor, and this is very difficult to recreate on a war games table, and some rules have attempted it, and I'll come back to that in a second, is the fact that the French didn't really want to fight. They've been in a defensive mode for you know, close on 20 years. And I think if your country had been through what they'd been through in World War One, you'd be in a similar situation. You know, silly thing, my father was somewhere to the right of Genghis Khan, and yet he was a member of the Young Communist Party in the middle of the 1930s. Why? For the same reason that my wife was a member of CND in the 80s. Because everybody was scared. You know, you were going to have aircraft coming over, dropping gas bombs on London. The best thing, therefore, to do was to make war not happen. And that's how the French felt, and they never dug in, if you like, with the kind of the Dunkirk spirit in the way that we did. Maybe because we had the Channel, you know, to protect us from that point of view, and the RAF. But the 1940 campaign is fascinating because where the French did locally under good leadership fights, they fought really well. Yeah. And using chain of command as a set of rules, the French are actually a difficult opponent to beat as the Germans, because they're big, they're robust. You know, a section fire from a French section is the same as a section fire from a German section in terms of physical dice numbers, and that's a tough thing to beat. The other set of rules I've always used for World War II has been Blitzkrieg Commander. So Blitzkrieg Commander, you know, the French command values are so low that in 1940 the Germans can run rings around them. You know, they'll get 3 activations for the French 2, even the French 1, and that can be a challenge as a French commander. You're kind of forced to play static. You know, you can't move a great deal. But in chain of command, it's a very different kettle of fish. You know, you really can use the French. In fact, in some ways, they're a little bit too powerful for what you can do with them. But I've been fighting 1940 as a campaign, you know, right from for 30 years. It's always been a campaign that's fascinated me. So it's a great campaign, brilliant campaign.
Right. No, that's excellent. So if I'll skip to Scott. And then say, in terms of the, you know, what's been said thus far, and then how you might look to say, well, okay, do you use other games other than Chain of Command to do France 1940 in the same way Peregrine has just mentioned, or what are your thoughts?
Well, it's quite funny actually, because Peregrine just said there's pretty much what I was going to say as well. But I'll just add a couple of things. First of all, at the platoon level, I use chain of command because, quite frankly, I think there's no other rule system that comes close to simulating that kind of warfare as chain of command does at the platoon level. So that's good. And also you can get in things like the French fifth column, the fifth column's getting involved, which goes some way to illustrate the reluctance or the divided loyalties amongst the French, which is, this is the thing, that the French were dealing with the same kind of problems that the Dutch, the Norwegians, and a lot of the mainland European nations were dealing with, and Britain to an extent. You can't forget that prior to the Second World War, the Brits had their own fascist movement as well. So it's a really interesting period of history, that late 30s, just on the cusp of the Second World War, where, if not for a few, really personalities, things could have been very, very different in regards to how national leaders galvanized and pointed their people in a particular political direction. But I do like the fact that in chain of command you do have these issues with, the French gendarme that's actually not really a gendarme. He's a fifth columnist or whatnot.
That really Jean-Claude sniper who just pops up bloody everywhere.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, chain of command at platoon level. I ain't been shot, mum, at the company plus level, and Blitzkrieg Commander. Again, Blitzkrieg Commander is a great game for fighting battalion, a battalion level combat. It's got enough nuance and stuff in it that you can simulate the command friction well, in a really simple way, by just simply going, the French command structure is clunky. It's not going to work for you all the time. Whereas the German command structure, it can have problems, but as a general rule, they're going to have that command superiority, that 3C, that 3CI ability to be able to command, control, and get inside the other guy's Boyd cycle or OODA loop, where you're dictating what's going on the battlefield, and he's trying to react and keep up with what you're doing, which is effectively what the Germans did for the vast majority of the campaign in France 1940. But the thing I like about chain of command, however, is when it comes down to the platoon level, the French soldier wasn't that much. You could easily argue that the French private soldier was just as competent as the German private soldier as well. And you've got to remember, a lot of these, not all the divisions that fought against France had that combat experience against the Poles. So,
Yeah. Mark,
that's my 2 cents worth.
Mark, in terms of where you might say would take the, I'm not sure whether you play chain of command at all, actually, or whether it's different rules yourself. What are you?
You see, I'm not. Because I've gone for 15 mil for bigger battalion, that sort of scale.
Yes.
It's cost, isn't it, guys? We know how expensive stuff is, and what I think, I do agree with Scott. I think, and Perry, and all of you, basically, the chain of command looks excellent. Basically, at the level it is. The thing is, the problem with our community is that I think we sometimes think that, there is no one rule set that rules them all. There's nothing is ever going to fit our own individual. And I've coined a phrase, what I call non-prescriptive rules. One of the big things about early wargaming and things was it was about testing command and understanding what was going on. I always bring this reference up. Before the Battle of Midway, the American Air Fleet spent weeks in a huge hangar with giant boats working out how they were going to operate tactically with carriers, because they couldn't afford the logistics of sending airplanes out or the risk of losing, the crews and things like that. And wargaming was used really to develop these ideas and tactics. And I think that's somewhat overlooked, and I think it's in the British Military Handbook, is used as an exemplar on wargaming. But for me, I think it doesn't matter what the rules system are. It's whether or not you're trying to reflect what was going on, or you're just, I suppose, having a game or whatever. And I think it comes back to what Scott said about the pint-sized campaigns and the context and what you're learning from it. But if I can just come back on what Peregrine said, I mean, absolutely about Poland, it's so true. Most of the German forces are rubbish in France. They're not great. They're much improved from what they were. But if you read the reports from the German High Command about the state of their troops, they were appalled at their condition. And I think a lot of battles tend to always put sort of elite forces, when I think the mainstay is really just the German impetus and its tactical planning and how quick it can adapt. And friction, I think, is the most critical aspect in any form of war game. And to give an example, for us, when we're looking at simulating a particular battle, we're looking at the facts that are going to go in, and we will use cards to relate that. For instance, in one battle I had 3 change of order cards. So you get an order, you're attacking. Then you get a counter order, you've got to pull back. Then you get a counter order, you've got to maneuver. So if you're trying to structure an attack, it's out the window, it's completely out the window. And it sort of simulates a lot of what is going on. But I do think, that there is a problem here as well, which is rarely touched on, which is, I think a lot of people get into the historical wargaming because they're very passionate about the history. But I also see, and I do understand why, a lot of companies wanting to exploit that history for profit. And that's where I get worried, coming from an archaeological point of view. We have a saying in that, which is about corrupting the record. And I know this seems probably a bit far-fetched, but if you keep embedding a particular ideal into people's mind's eye, they begin to believe it. And that's why I think we have a sort of duty as well to try and represent it as best as possible. And that's why I love the games that you guys do, because it shows, you're bringing up interesting facets of history and you're replicating that history. And at platoon level, you really get a feeling that actually there isn't much difference in it, but there is a tactical difference. So I love it, and I think we should perhaps spend more time as communities looking at, like there are the France 1940 group and stuff like that, where it's not so much about scale or what you're doing, but really about the history. So that's my sort of thing, where I'm coming from, if that makes sense.
I think to shut something in there, I totally agree with you about things becoming legend just because they're being talked about. I mean, the classic one is that Bernard Cornwell is responsible for everybody assuming the British fought in line and fired 4 rounds a minute. The only time they actually fought 4 rounds a minute was at Albuera, where Wellington wasn't there, and Beresford wrote to Wellington a report which Wellington said, please rewrite this report and show
it did, didn't it?
Because they've lost so many men fighting 4 rounds a minute. So it is very difficult, and people tend to think, I mean, you made a comment earlier that, the British ran away. Actually, I can't think of any action in the 1940 campaign where the British routed. They never did. They fought very, very solidly all the way back. They were strategically running, for sure, no doubt about that, but they weren't doing it at a tactical level. And the French didn't do it very often either, except when their command structure collapsed and when they were 2nd and 3rd class divisions who really didn't want to be there anyway. And there were quite a lot of those on the Meuse, because that was supposed to be a quiet sector, funnily enough. So that was bullish again. So I agree with you that the scale and rules and everything else are somewhat irrelevant. But that said, people who fight bolt action just enjoy getting LMGs and Tigers and King Tigers and even King Tigers on the table, because that's what Warhammer has led them to do. And let's get the biggest piece of metal we can lay our hands on and stick it on a war games table. And there's nothing wrong with that. And companies like Warlord and Flames of War make a huge amount of money out of encouraging them to do that. But that's got to be good. I mean, think about the average age now when you go to a war game show, and I know they're quite recent history because the last one we all went to was a good 3 or 4 months back. But the average age is starting to come down. You are starting to see 30-year-olds, 35-year-olds, 20-year-olds getting involved in historical gaming. And Bolt Action and Warlord and Flames of War have got a lot to do with that. And all powers at their elbow. I'm all for it. And maybe we'll get them into proper gentlemanly wargaming, Napoleonics and American Civil War and other such things at a later date.
The vast majority of people... The vast majority of people that I have playing in my group now that play Chain of Command are ex-Bolt Action players. So they've come in through the door of Bolt Action. They've played that, then they've gone, oh, man, it's so points dominated. It's almost like whoever comes up with the best list wins. And what the hell is a Nebelwerfer doing, firing direct fire? And then what happens is they speak to people and they say, well, give Chain of Command a try. And then what happens is a lot of them come across. Now, a lot of them don't as well. And that's fine. And
because it's difficult. That's why. Because Chain of Command is difficult. Attacking across open ground. Chain of Command is so realistic that it's horrifying.
Yeah, exactly right. And the other thing about Chain of Command that I like and I didn't touch on before, particularly in regards to the 1940 campaign, is that you have these rules these national characteristics that steer you towards fighting doctrinally. And you find that if you fight your platoons doctrinally, generally speaking, they perform better than if you try and do something, outside the box. And that's not to say that, you can't be adventurous with what you're doing with your Panzer Grenadier platoon or whatever. But they fought doctrinally for a reason. The guys that came up with these systems of combat, they're not idiots. The Italians were not idiots. They understood what the strengths and weaknesses of their troops were, and they fought to that. Same as the French, same as the Germans, and so on and so forth. And I think we at our own peril, we dismiss the doctrine, of certain armies when we're playing, we're trying to simulate what they're doing on a tabletop. If we go, I know the Germans, they've got these two light machine guns, and doctrinally the idea was they were mutually supporting one another, but what the hell would they know? It'd be much, much better if I, used them as two assault squads. And so, that's one of the things I like about Chain of Command, but not just Chain of Command, any kind of rule system that tries to steer you towards using your troops and your assets in a doctrinally correct manner.
Can I just put it? Can I just add a question? Sorry.
One thing hasn't been mentioned yet about 1940, and it comes across in Chain of Command, and I've got experience of it from another period too. I got into Spanish Civil War about 6. Fascinating conflict, particularly the first 6 or 7 months, when it's amateur hour. It becomes quite sort of static and boring after that. But the first 6 or 7 months. But what's amazing about Spanish Civil War, and is repeated in 1940, is the inability of troops to deal with armour if they don't have some kind of anti-tank support. And most people start off in World War II gaming fighting, D-Day or Normandy, where you've got Panzerfaust and bazookas and Piats and all the rest of it. And in 1940, you've got sod all. I mean, you've got Boys rifles and the German and French equivalents, which against anything are almost crap. I mean, they will stop a 222 or a Panzer II. They'll frighten it, but they won't kill it. So the only way you can deal, and this is very key in the Jean Blow Gap campaign I've discovered, the only way you can deal with German armour is to bring on French anti-tank guns or French armour. And in that particular campaign, they've made the French tanks so cheap that you'd never buy an anti-tank gun, you'd buy an R-35 because it's only 3 points and it will knock out anything German. And in one of the games I played 3 or 4 weeks back, I played a Zoom game with a mate of mine from Surrey over a whole day. He's very aggressive and he would have been a British cavalry officer in his day, and he just sees anything that charges it, and he'd spent his support points on 3 pounds of twos. I had one R35, and the end of the game was almost a bolt action type fast, where his 3 pounds of twos were driving around my R35 and couldn't knock it out. They just could not knock this thing out. And I was taking the occasional pot shot when my command dice allowed me, and knocking them out. But if you have infantry faced with a Panzer II, particularly with their 6 points of twin linked HE, and haven't got the ability to knock that Panzer II out, it's game over. There is no point sitting there, because particularly if you're playing a campaign, you don't want to take unnecessary losses, so you're going to fall back. And doctrinally, that is interesting, because I don't think the French, or anybody for that matter, anticipated that kind of warfare. They weren't close enough to know what had happened in Poland, and they didn't anticipate this was going to be the case, and they hadn't learned the lessons from the Spanish Civil War. So anti-tank ability was not as strong as it should have been. So you see pictures from the Spanish Civil War of troops running away in the face of tank attacks. That happened in 1940, absolutely no doubt about it at all, none at all. So combined arms, I think, is the other massive learning point that starts to come in 1940. The Germans learned it in Poland, and then used it in 1940, and then everybody else had to learn it after 1940 bloody quick.
I was playing the Amberville pint-sized campaign, which if anyone hasn't played it yet, I highly recommend it. It's probably the best pint-sized
Which one?
Aberville.
Oh yeah, I played that.
Yeah, and I was playing it, and I was playing as the Brits against my mate Rowan, and he made this comment one day, and it was so true. He said, that Char B is more terrifying for my Germans than it would be if my guys were British facing a Tiger. Because if I'm facing a Tiger, at least I've got a Piat.
Yep.
Whereas that's got more of a chance of... I mean, a Tiger will... A Piat will keep a Tiger tank honest. It's like, it probably won't knock me out, but I'm not going to just ignore it. If he can get a flank shot on me, he's got a sporting chance. But a Char B, and you've got German infantry, it's a behemoth, man. Yeah. How the hell do I deal with that?
It's like being attacked by heavy cavalry in the Polonis and not knowing how to form square. I mean, exactly like that. Terrifying. Absolutely terrifying.
What's a square?
Yeah.
Conscious of the current circumstances, what do you do in terms of playing solo? Because that's what I do all the time. The Jean Blue Gap campaign I do, and I'm both the French and Germans, but Chain of Command allows you to play in that way because it's unpredictable. I just wondered about other rule sets that you think are similar, or how you would play solo in that way.
I think, can I just make a point on this?
Bring someone on who's...
when we decided to do our rules and things, they were really for us to do the Blitzkrieg campaign. A lot of people have expressed interest in what we're trying to do today. But one of the things that we decided to start the system from a solo perspective, not from opposed play. And we wanted to look at what we could do. And what I have found is I am thankful for COVID for one enormous thing. I mean, there has never been a time when I think, if I recall, where there's been so much connection within the community between people through things like Zoom, Messenger, Teams, all of these things. And I think one of the things is that solo doesn't have to be solo anymore. The irony is that if you can find players, and I'm trying to do this on trying to get people, part of what I want to do is to get people to start posting up that they're going to have a game. If you want to come and play, come and play. I mean, all we do really, and the beauty of this as well, that people I've noticed is how you can destroy the 50-foot general, because if you use your camera well, you can limit visibility right down. I mean, I'm playing a massive game at the moment in the East 930s, and the only really getting are through periscopes. And I've had to, we're very much into, you have to do your battle plan first, and you've got to try and stick to that plan because it's going to be assessed on that plan and how effective it was. So you've got to draw everything through. And it's absolutely remarkable what this medium allows us to do as wargamers. I think it's actually, we're on the tipping point of something really. The fact that someone can be like Scott or someone can be millions of miles away, and yet I could play a game with him without any problem at all now. All I have to do is, switch my and put my dice and throw my dice. I end up getting the players to throw all the dice anyway. I haven't got time because I'm moving around the table. So I think, we use cards and we use all sorts of things to try and stimulate. So players, if you were playing, I suppose, de facto alone, you'd be able to, there's a certain degree of randomness about what's going to happen. But yeah, I mean, that's what I've got out of this. I don't know whether that answers the question directly.
Yeah.
But I think it's a fantastic opportunity now. And I think as a community, we need to grab it by the nuts, really, and use it, because more people are going to connect. There's going to be some fantastic gaming going on. And also for those that are solo, they've worked so hard on their collections and their figures and their sets or tables. For them to be able to host it, it's a showcase for them as well. And it's a fantastic way of doing it. You don't have to hump gear from A to B. I stopped doing going to shows because it was so enormous. I mean, the amount of gear, I'd fill a white van full of crap, drive up to this thing, spend hours setting it up. I've got 4 hours, then I'm off. Whereas I think some of us are fortunate we have a table or facility that we can host from. And I want to invite people onto that table and so that they get a chance. And that's my brief tuppence worth of it.
I've got this, it's funny that you should mention, Mark, what you were talking about, because back on, and I just pulled it up on my blog, Wednesday, December the 2nd, 2015. What I did is I played a game of Chain of Command, and I used Messenger to play it. And I got a guy, and I can't even remember his name, Christian something. But anyway, what I did is I would take photos from the perspective of the platoon commander and the section commander and the tank that he was. That's all I sent him. And I would go, and he was like, and I gave him a call sign. He was 3-1, and I go, sorry, he was call sign 3, and I go 3. This is 3-1. Contact, and then I'd say what it was, and what it was a Panzer IV. But I rolled the dice to randomise to see if he exaggerated or downplayed what it was, and obviously it was like contact front Tiger tank.
And it was just fantastic, as you said, Scott. That periscope. I mean, bunkers can't see. You can't see an enemy moving behind a hill. You can't see anything, and it makes you. It's far more immersive. Yeah. I can't express that, but you're sitting there and on the edge of your seat, sort of wondering what next. You take the objective. I can give you a real world experience. And a squad moving towards a platoon moving towards a village, and suddenly we come under fire. A section is tasked to go and do a flanking maneuver. They moved, I think, about 5 meters. And then they just stopped and just opened fire into this drainage ditch. Long story short, the lead scout, when I saw a bad guy in the drainage ditch and I opened fire, there wasn't anyone in the drainage ditch other than a local that was using it to go and tend to his bloody fields or whatever. But what it was the lad was terrified of going into a drain because the insurgents would put... because drainage ditches are good for routes of movement, they would put IEDs in them. So there was no way, this lad's gone, there's no way I'm crossing a drainage ditch because I'll get blown up. And so, you can't, you dive into your training manual, infantry platoon commander's training manual, what to do in the situation where the soldier is terrified of a drainage ditch. It's not subsection 3.
It's not there.
And Peregrine, what are your thoughts?
I've always been a gamer at home. The current house we're in, we've been here 20 years. We bought because it had a triple garage out the back, and I could nick 2/3 of it, which is what I've done. So, I'm very lucky. I've got a permanent 12x6 here, which I will just turn the camera around and I'll show you. This is my games room. That's my permanent 12x6. I'm very lucky to have that. And it was ridiculous now because we're only fighting Chain of Command now over a 6x4, so the table's all covered in bloody troops. But to me, the social aspect also is a big part of gaming. And I haven't seen the three guys who I game with regularly and have done for almost 20 years. I haven't seen them now for almost 3 months. And I miss that. And often, we'll spend the first half an hour of a game night chatting about shit, what's going on in the world, and all the rest of it. And I do miss that social contact. I agree with you, though, Mark, in the sense that you can do things with gaming now with this situation that you couldn't do before. Getting my camera to actually stay in this claw would be really good. But that's a lot of work for the host to do. And I found a couple of games that I've hosted, I've come away from those games absolutely knackered.
No. I totally agree. It's just spinning around. But I mean, my mate's talking, Scott, you might like this. He's got several people because he's ex-army and quite a senior rank, and he's decided he wants to get GoPro, one of those cameras, because he thinks that's going to be a lot easier to manage. He's got this massive table. We've got an urban set that's, 5 foot deep, which I've got to go into. And it's like, he's been thinking about lots of things. I totally agree with what you're saying, Peregrine. It is all about a social hobby. But there are lots of people I know in America and other places who just are so remote, they're never going to find a club or be able to meet anyone. So, if I've got a chance, and I'm sure Scott or all of you would be the same, if there's someone who's really enthusiastic about wanting to do the early war and you connect with that person, you want to host it, and I think you're going to make the effort. Doing it a lot, though, I agree with you, Peregrine, it could be absolutely knackering. I found by the end of it, if I've been on the table for 3 hours,
Picking up on another point you made, which I thought was, again, an interesting one, the whole 50-foot jungle concept. I mean, as Wargamers, we struggled with that, and we've always struggled with that. And on the occasions when you've used systems that have blinds, like I've been Top Mum as an example, it does make the game far more interesting, because even with Chain of Command, he's spent 12 support points, you've only got 6. You look at his list and you think, if I was spending 12 points, what would I buy? And you're pretty... Okay, he can bluff you on whether he bought Stukas or whether he didn't, or whether he bought tanks or whether he didn't. But you're still fairly sure of what he's likely to do. Using blinds in a system like Ain't I've Been Shot Mum. So, for instance, when we did Blitzkrieg Commander, when there was an attack defense scenario, we did quite a lot of campaigning using Blitzkrieg Commander, because the scale lends itself to taking board games directly onto a tabletop for campaign purposes. We used to have a system of cards, and we had numbered cards, and that was all that you could see on the table. And those cards wouldn't become units until you investigated, scouted, got close enough, got shot at, whatever. And I do think that's the one thing that's missing in Chain of Command a little bit, in the sense that everything is very visible once it's on table. And listening to what Scott was saying about only giving your opponent the point of view of this section commander on the table, that's certainly something you can do with camera and with Zoom or GoPro or whatever else. It's fantastic. But it's then not going to be a game so much as you almost becoming a game master. You're going to be running it, being a game master for other people playing that game, which is also very enjoyable sometimes. I've GM'd some games. Sometimes you'll run a board game for people at a club because they haven't played it before, and you actually play. You'll actually just run it for them, like Race to the Rhine or something, and really, really enjoy that experience. So I'm with you on that one.
Yeah, I know.
The social aspect for me is a big part of it. and I really miss that. Really miss that.
Oh, I do, and I agree. And it's like with Scott as well. One point I also must add that everyone seems to be absolutely fixated by the fact that the rule is absolutely specific. You have to play the game within the rules, which is fine. I get that, the rules. But as I said, when I watched Scott's debut sort of videos, he sort of said about, well, we've changed this, because we think that this works. This is the whole point. I think people need to step away. Rules are a guideline, I think. I mean, obviously, you've got to have structure. We know that. And obviously, if we're playing remote, it's going to be a bit different. And I agree with you about the Games Master thing. But I also think to help develop the community, there's a massive market of people out there who just can't get involved other than through Facebook posting, here's a picture of my Sherman, this is what I'm doing, I'm painting this. Who I think are quite desperate to communicate in another way and to get on a table.
Well,
can I?
Here,
and we've got 3 players with amazing tables. We're exemplars as well to these people, and I'm not blowing our trumpets or anything, but we've all put a lot of work into what we do because we're very passionate about it. And I think a lot of people want that opportunity to be part of that. So that's the way I look at it, anyway.
Well, if I can just pick up there, is that so that's exactly where I come from. So I started doing war games 40 years ago, something like that, maybe. But in terms of what I do now, my table is permanently up here where I am in the garage, so I'm able to do that. Now, I wasn't connected to anybody. It was just me. It's just because I'm interested in the period. Now, I put a huge amount of effort in terms of the table. I think what the table looks like is the most important thing. Then the figures that you've got, then you're doing it so it's realistic, etc. But the thing that's completely changed everything for me is the fact that actually, once I started to go into the communities, into Facebook groups and start conversations, etc., it seemed a natural thing to do then to create, a YouTube channel so people could share that experience from what I was doing, even though I was on my own. And then I thought, well, hang on a second, why don't I communicate? Why don't I start having these conversations and taping these and sharing that again? So actually, it's a solo experience, but actually it's shared globally, so it's a thing that I really wanted to try and get across, because I'm sure, I'm going to make an estimate to say, I guess maybe half of the wargamers, be them fantasy players or historical players, actually collect a massive amount of figures, they paint them, which then sit in boxes, and they don't really then exploit that. And I really want to think, well, wouldn't it be a good thing, be it this current circumstances or not, that people see the videos and then go, actually, that'd be great, why don't I get connected? It just seemed a really good outcome.
I had a mate, when I was a young digger, there was one of the sergeants in my regiment who had this massive collection of beautifully painted AB miniatures, American Civil War stuff. And he would collect, and he wrote rules, all this kind of stuff. To get him to play a game was damn near impossible. He very rarely did he actually play a game. But I think some people actually, I don't know, maybe they're a bit timid when it comes to actually putting their miniatures on a table and playing. I don't know, but
good point.
And there's a lot of people out there that collect miniatures but don't actually game with them, for whatever reason, and that's fine as well. But there was something I was going to say, but it slipped my mind now. But my drugs are kicking in, so I'll go quiet.
Look, I'm conscious that I'm taking up a good hour of your time here, so I just wanted to sort of finish off. If we said just a round robin bit to say, just coming back to the France 1940 element, what might be the next things that we do in that period, and any final thoughts?
My plan at the moment is to finish off the Jean-Blo Gap campaign.
Yep.
Because that's where I am at the minute. I'm on to game table 6. I'm on to defending the heights. Scenario 5 rather. And I'm playing French. So I think we're on game 8. So I'm getting close to winning, but I've lost the last 2 very, very badly. I haven't played the Abbeville campaign. Quite fancy that. And I've also recently noticed somebody putting up some stuff about the Road to Bremen campaign. He's done some. You've seen the pictures on Facebook of his final table with the factories and what have you. It's just absolutely stunning. And it's funny because my father's division was involved in that campaign. So I'm actually quite interested to go and do that campaign. I've also just started to build a Russian army, and the Road to Bremen can also work the other way around and be used for Russians. So I'm quite interested to fight with the Russians under chain of command, because it's going to be quite interesting to see how having a fixed section of only 10 guys and no teams works. So that's going to be quite interesting. But France 1940, I wanted to ask you guys, because I know you chain of command players, the two of you anyway. Have you decided that VB launchers are a complete bloody waste of time, or have you actually found them useful?
They're useful if it's a static target. So if you're firing at like an infantry gun in a fixed position, it's useful. But beyond that, no, they're pretty useless.
They are.
I've actually found them quite useful, funnily. But I basically, you've got to have them. You've got to have your enemy fixed before you bring them in.
Uh-huh.
So, I mean, they're great if you've got an enemy pinned, just to really just give them the final kicking. So if you can pin some Germans down,
sure.
So get them pinned, and then bring up the VBs and just finish them.
But they're very vulnerable as well, though, because only being a 4-man or is it 5-man team, isn't it?
4.
Including
4, yeah.
Yeah, isn't it 4 plus a junior leader?
It's 1 per squad, 1 VB launcher per squad, and then you've got the junior leader. So it's 4, I think, off the top of my head.
Yeah, you're right.
I think it's 4.
It's 4 men, including the junior leader.
Yeah, you're right. It's 4. It's 3 guys and a junior leader. I mean, that makes them really, really vulnerable. And okay, you can buy a motorcycle team, for instance, and add those two together almost as a section. Although obviously the VB corporal can't command them or take shock off. Yeah. But you could stick them down under the junior sergeant or whatever. But on their own, I remember the first game I used them. I stuck them in a building right at the back because obviously they've got unlimited range, which is really useful. And all the German did was just open up with 2 LMGs at that building on its own, and put so much shock on them they ran away. So I've as a result always used them now in combination with a section, so that at least the damage can be spread. But then it's difficult now because that section needs to be mobile, and as you say, the VBs need to be static and firing at a static target if they're going to be of any use. So I don't really think they're worth the points in the majority of games that I've played so far. Whereas the Renault R35 is just wow. I mean, and also the motorcycle teams. If you buy 2 motorcycle teams for whatever it is, 3 points each or whatever, 2 points each, you get a full section, and that's very, very powerful as a late reinforcement when you're in trouble. No, it's a great system. The Jean-Blo Gap system, and also the Blitzkrieg chain of command book.
Yes.
I think the Lardis have outdone themselves. I mean, I know Richard. I've known him for a long time, and I know the quality of his research is exemplary. It really, really is. He's one of those people who, when he gets his teeth into something, it's 23 hours a day for the next 10 weeks kind of attitude. That's the kind of person he is. And the research he's put into it has been absolutely fantastic. Fantastic. Have you guys found, by the way, a couple of the non-Lardy pint-sized campaigns? We did a Too Many Bridges. You seen that one? Again, set in running back from the Dial Gap. And they're not play tested enough, so you'll get to certain points of the campaign and something just doesn't work or whatever. Whereas the Lardy ones, I haven't found any problems with any of them. They're so well written and well play tested.
Yeah, I played the Many Bridges one, and I thought that was a bit unbalanced, but so it's a real hit and miss. Some of them, but like I said, the Abbeville pint-sized campaign is probably, for me, that is like the guy. I wish I could think of his name. I'm not doing him credit. I'll have to find it. But the way that was put together, not only, I mean, one of the things that were good about it is the maps were actually gridded. So actually putting the map, I mean, I know it's a silly little thing. You can just grid the map yourself. Of course you can. But when it's already done, it says to me that the guy's gone to the trouble, gone to a lot of trouble with these. And he also makes them so that they're adaptable to bolt action as well for those people who play that. But the Abbeville Pint-Sized campaign was a real nail biter. That really went down to the wire. So that tells me that's a good balanced campaign. And I'd play that again at a drop of a hat. But it's sort of, but the Road to Bremen Pint-Sized campaign, I played that with Rowan. Late last year we played that, right? And I played I actually did an orders brief prior to the campaign. So there's an hour long.
That was excellent, Scott. That was really good. I loved seeing that. That was really well done, by the way.
Yeah, I just wanted to give people an idea of what an actual orders brief is like.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I did that, and then what I did is I was determined to play the pint-sized campaign adhering to that orders brief. So I tied my own hands to a degree, and the purpose of, and what I said with the center of gravity for my platoon was the actual infantry. It's like, we're near the end of the war. I don't want people dying unnecessarily. So I did everything I could to preserve the infantry, which in the end actually didn't work terribly well, because if you fight too cautiously, you can get your lads into a bit of bother.
Yeah.
But that is a really good pint-sized campaign. So that was,
as I said, my interest in that is my dad's division, which was 52nd Lowland, was involved in that campaign, and I've read the divisional history, and they got so desperate for men in the last sort of 6 weeks of the surrender that they started using the reconnaissance units as a standard infantry battalion, because they just didn't have the manpower inside the infantry battalions, which would get to the point where they were knackered. And you've got to remember that the 52nd Lowland had only come into action in October of the previous year. They'd been very lucky. Their first big action was the assault on Volcheren and the clearing of the Scheldt, which obviously was a difficult campaign, but they didn't lose huge amounts of men. So between November and May, they'd taken those kind of losses without replacement and being forced to use reconnaissance regiments for things they were just not designed to do. But so that's the reason I wanted to do it. I wanted to do that.
Well, here's something that'll blow your mind. When I played the pint-sized campaign, most of the casualties that I sustained playing that were in the recon sections that I attached to my battalion. To preserve the infantrymen, I would get these carrier sections, and I go, right, you guys go forward and draw the heat, because I didn't want. Because if you guys, as the battalion or company commanders, like, if you guys die, I don't care. You're not my boys. So I would throw these recon sections forward.
How do you deal with that? Out of interest, point actually on the pint-sized campaigns, one of the things that you tend to do as a gamer, and I'm not a big gamer in the sense that I'm not a rules lawyer. For the advantage, I don't play with rules. I like the whole ethos of Two Fat Lardy, which is play the period, not the rules, and that's to me far more important. But you can buy loads of support stuff like an extra section or whatever, and you're going to send them forward because you don't care whether they die or not. They're not affecting the core morale of your platoon.
But
we debated between the four of us for quite a while, the three guys I game with, as to whether we should aggregate the losses across everything on the table to affect the platoon's morale. And how do you guys deal with that?
Well, I just want to say, just because I'm going to have to disappear. So I just want to quickly make an answer to your question. First of all, it's been an absolute privilege being here, chatting to everyone. I've really enjoyed getting to know people I haven't virtually seen, so a big hello. And secondly, I just quickly have to say that I think going forward, I think we all need to do what we're doing, because I think in whichever avenue we're doing it, we're obviously reaching out to people, and I think we're making a difference. And as I said today about Blitzkrieg and everything, something like this program, where having us on with different scales, different viewpoints, I think it's really an important thing to continue doing, Greg, because I think personally we need to basically tell people more about the early war. I think it's very important, because without really understanding that, you can't really understand what's going on in the middle or at the end, so to speak. Yeah. But from personally, very quickly, for me, I've got I don't know, after Warhaven, Jesus, I don't know what's next, but I think we've got drops into The Hague, a seaplane landing with Luftlandssturm trying to seize various canals, which goes horribly wrong. We've got, Hanau, there's so many battles in Hanau just to get to Gembloux, and that's really exciting because of the exploitation that's going on. And then the Meuse, Christ, I can't wait for that. I mean, we built bloody huge rivers and bridges and things like that, and that's going to be massive in scope and scale. And we would probably start with 15 turns of super attacks. So the French player on that end is going to be sitting there just going like that for 15 turns.
Well,
but we've got moments in there. We'll have characters like, I think it was that pioneer who won the Knight's Cross, him and 8 men who crossed and took 6 bunkers out, all of that. But yeah, I've really enjoyed it, and I think, what I've got out today as well, in terms of, as Scott said, is about the context. Playing one battle on its own is a lot of fun, but when you have to think about the factors that go into the next battle, it does make the game so much more interesting, or the series of games. And I think at the end of a campaign, you can actually really reflect on it and learn, as Scott indicated in his brutality to his reconnaissance troops. I can only imagine that the young subaltern in that reconnaissance troop was saying, "That son of a bitch."
Well, look,
not son of a bitch. That's an Americanism. He'd be saying,
I think he died.
Well, I think we're just about out of battery as well as out of time. So look, I just want to make sure I want to say thanks again, and make sure for all three of you, that's been a really fantastic conversation. I really, really appreciate it.
Yeah, and until next time, I would welcome the opportunity. I think there's so much more to talk about.
Definitely.
And yeah, it's very interesting. We can all get round the table at some point, gentlemen, and play a game.
That would be brilliant.
I think that would be very interesting. And we'll give you all
going to do that.
There's Scott can go as reconnaissance in the next game, and I'm sure Peregrine can lead the infantry, and Gregory can handle staff and artillery, and we'll have a field day.
When I RSM, I'd come into the CEO, my commanding officer, go, "How's things going today, sir?" I go, "I don't know, ask the soldiers. If they tell you they hate me, I'm doing a good job."
That's a good one to finish. All right, thanks, fellas.
Right, cheerio, gentlemen. Pleasure
Brilliant.
to meet you all, and until next time.
Will do. Thanks a lot.
All right. Au revoir.
Au revoir.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. Okay, so thanks very much to Scott and to Mark and to Peregrine. I really enjoyed the discussion, and also thanks once again to Nicholas for sharing the images that we could use in the video. So if you have any thoughts, any ideas, then feel free to put comments on the YouTube channel, or if you want to subscribe, that would be great, or indeed join the Wargaming World Facebook group. It's a relatively new group, and you can come in and see what's taking place behind the scenes, as it were, perhaps, and add in your own thoughts. So we'll continue the interviews moving forward, as well as other wargaming things, including battle reports, etc. And just to finish off by saying, stay safe and enjoy your wargaming. Thanks for watching.